Welcome back to Racing Rundown here on YouTube. I'm Eric DeCoster. It's another Breeders' Cup preview. This one we'll be taking a look at the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint Grade 1, 5.5 furlongs on the grass for $1 million. It is race 4 on the Keeneland Saturday card. It's the second of 9 Breeders' Cup races on that card. It is the first leg of the 50 Cent All-Turf Pick 4, set to take place at Keeneland on Saturday. And it's a fun race, full field of 14 set to turf sprint here. Plus 2 also eligibles I'll touch on briefly towards the end because you never know if they draw. And in fact, I think only one of them will draw, and so we'll touch on them at the end. And this is a race, when you look at it, it feels like there's 3 ways it could go. Golden Pal dominates, Highfield Princess dominates, or things will get wacky. And we'll cover all of that as we go through the 14 horses in the body of this field. And we will start with the one, of course, from the rail, Creative Force, 1 of 2 for Charlie Appleby and Godolphin as they look to take their first win in this race. Really not a big presence because turf sprinting is just different over in Europe, and that's not what their program is built on, but they bring their 2 top guns as it relates to this division. Both high-level competitors, both show up at every race and oftentimes run well in them. Creative Force being the first, he's the first stringer for this barn. He's certainly the one you'd be more inclined to go with, as William Buick does ride as well. This is a winner of a Group 1. He won the British Champions Sprint back in 2021. Only 4 starts this year, none winning efforts, but he has placed well in a couple, including a third in the Champions Sprint behind one of the Breeders' Cup Mile favorites, Kinross, last time out, and 3 back, only missed by a neck behind stablemate Naval Crown in the Platinum Jubilee at Royal Ascot. So he's done a lot of good work. He's certainly, once again, the more well-backed from the camp. And I do think he has the opportunity to quicken up well over this 5.5. It's a little, for a turf sprint race in America, it's not like it's a all-out, go to the lead, never look back kind of race. You can win from off the pace over this track. We saw it, in fact, very similar kind of running style, I should say, to the 2020 winner of this race at Keeneland, Glass Slippers, where you're going to sit back third of the field, make your one big run, but if you can navigate traffic, you'll have the turn of foot to win it. And Creative Force does fit that bill, and there's certainly a fair amount of speed in here. So it depends if that speed wants to back up, because we know what kind of speed is here in this year's rendition, and we'll touch on it, of course, in a few horses. But Creative Force, if those horses aren't on their A game or they do back up, he's a very likely one to come pick up the pieces. He's a horse I definitely will be, at a minimum, using in underneath positions, because I do think he has a very good chance to hit the board. He has a lot of class, and he should be able to handle this new configuration just fine. The 2 is Flotus, 3-year-old filly here. Not too often you see those ship over. And she's done some okay work. I mean, as a 2-year-old, she was strong. She was Group 1 place then, and she's Group 1 place this year. She was 3rd in the Commonwealth Cup, which is a 3-year-old restricted sprint Group 1 at Royal Ascot. She ran well there. Followed that up with a victory, actually. But a 3 starts since then against very similar to this bunch, not as good. 2 disappointing runs, kind of sandwich an okay 3rd, where she was beaten about 4 lengths behind Highfield Princess, one of our favorites in here at the Curra 2-back. She will be, try to be forwardly placed. I don't know if she has the true speed to actually be in the firing line, but that's what she ideally likes to do, is go to the front and not look back. We'll see if she's able to do that. Just feels like she doesn't match up with her European counterparts in here, and as we know, there might be a couple Americans who are a touch better as well. So this one would be a real surprise to me. The 3, Emaraaty Ana, an intriguing one. I know I mentioned Creative Force. I honestly believe this is a European with some ability to run a big race and take advantage should the 2 favorites falter in this spot. He started the year off very weak form. I mean, he made a couple starts in Dubai at Meydan, did not go well, faltered poorly at Royal Ascot in the Platinum Jubilee behind Naval Crown and Creative Force, among others. But he slowly wheeled his way back into form as the year's gone on. And I think it's interesting, if you look at his resume from 2021, it's kind of similar. A few starts were just nothing went his way, and then the 3 starts leading up to the Breeders' Cup, the form was refound. And this year, while he hasn't won, he ran a strong race in the Nunthorpe, won 3rd behind Highfield Princess, one of your favorites here, and the Platinum Queen, one of the favorites in the Juvenile Turf Sprint, and then was 2nd last time out in the Sprint Cup over 6 furlongs, a race he won in 2021. And Minzal, the winner of that race, was no doubt. He just freaked on that afternoon. But Emaraaty Ana ran his best race of the year. And when I look back to last year's Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint, that's really where the confidence comes from, that this guy could be in for a good run, because he was able to be engaged early on. When you think of Europeans turf sprinting, you think they're just not have the pace to handle the American speed, especially from the gate. But he broke well from the two posts and found himself stalking nicely along the inside, and he finished up well. I mean, Golden Talon, Lieutenant Dan, the top two finishers from the 2021 race, were just so much better than everybody else. But he was fighting among the other 12, or the other 10, I should say. So that impressed me, and the fact he's rounding back into form is a positive. So if there's anybody I think can upset the favorites, it is Emaraaty Ana. He's just found the right form this year, and I love that I can trust him around this configuration, because there's certain Europeans you just don't know if they can handle the turn and the sharpness of an American turf sprint. This guy absolutely can. If he can handle Del Mar, he can handle anything in my eyes when it comes to these conditions. So an intriguing type who's certainly going to be an okay price as well. The 4 Campanelle, the first of 3 Wesley Ward charges, and she's been a good filly. In her 4-year-old campaign, she's made 3 starts, 2 victories. Her lone loss was very, very close to outfinishing Naval Crown and Creative Force in the Platinum Jubilee. It was beaten only 3/4 of a length. Her lone start since then was in the ladies sprint at Kentucky Downs, only won by a nose, and that was a little concerning to me. I felt like she was much better than that field, and she really didn't put him away the way she needed to. Now, I do take that with a grain of salt as well, because she was coming off a layoff and going 6.5 furlongs. Probably not her distance. 5, 5.5, and 6, definitely a little bit more suitable to her style. She plays in this race, and we know she can come from off the pace. And we know she likes Keeneland. She's a winner over this course. So tons of positives going for her. But I don't know if she's better than her stablemates, and I don't know if she's better than the 2 Europeans I've already mentioned that I think might be a little interesting at mild prices at a minimum, as well as Highfield Princess. So good, but I don't know if she has the true ability to fully take this race out. 5, Go Bears Go. He's another European with strong American experience. He ran in the juvenile turf sprint last year as a 2-year-old and only lost by a half length, so he's another one you can trust to handle this configuration well. The problem is I don't think he has the ability to handle his company in this race. While he is a 2-time Group 3 winner this year, he has found himself in Group 1 races, especially his last 2 starts, and he just hasn't been of the level. You would think, okay, maybe he can take that step, and he just hasn't. He finished behind Emaraaty Ana in the Sprint Cup, behind Creative Force in the Champion Sprint, and really just never factored in those spots. So for me, he is a pass for that reason. He just hasn't had the talent to handle this bunch. So as much as the track configuration is concerned, his true ability absolutely is. The 6 is Highfield Princess. We've referenced her a few times. Let's discuss her. She's made 9 starts this year, earned over $1 million thanks to her 5 victories, and none more impressive than her 3-race winning streak at the Group 1 level. It's funny, the Platinum Jubilee, she was well backed enough, went off 7-1, chased home Naval Crown, Creative Force, and Campanelle, but what she's done in the last 3 almost makes you not care about the fact she lost to those 3 horses, because she's just been that good. The Flying 5 last time out just dominated. She likes to sit close. In this race, she's probably more of a stalker than a speed type. She'll try to get out there, but she's not going to be fast enough. But she'll be able to sit the right trip, and you just really can't deny what she's done recently. It certainly trumps anything that she did in her 27 starts before that. Crazy to say, but it's just true. She's just become a different horse and winning some of Europe's most prestigious Group 1s across 3 different countries, no less. So plenty of good coming from Highfield Princess. She's absolutely a player in here. The question is, of course, handling this U.S. track. In fact, you look at it, at least when her most recent running lines, 3 left-handed starts, similar to what she'll do here, she's not won any of those, and that was against much weaker than what she's beaten over the straight course as of late. So don't know how much you read into that. I'm going to read into it a little bit, as in it will hurt her chances ever so slightly, but also just chasing American speed is not something she's had to handle, and that's a big concern. Whereas those fears are rested, even with Go Bears Go, who doesn't have the talent ability to win this race. For her, not knowing how she can handle this kind of tight configuration is a big concern for me. The 7, Arrest Me Red, another Wesley Ward runner in here. Model of consistency. He just always brings his lunch pail and comes to work and runs his race. He's never been worse than third. He's never been beaten more than a length and a quarter in the Wesley Ward barn. And he certainly hasn't been facing the toughest of the tough. I mean, he's only actually made 1 Grade 1 top-level start. And I guess you could compare the Twin Spires Turf Sprint at Kentucky Derby weekend to this level a little bit. But overriding point is he's obviously found some easier spots. And even last time out in the Kentucky Downs Turf Sprint, very interesting race. Obviously, he didn't get good early position. He tends to like to stalk, if not lead, if he can. And he was back third of the field. He was not in contention early on. And while he finished up well, he was not able to outfinish Bran and Artemus Citylimits, who are both in this race. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. He's going to be able to find better position in here. But I feel like the fact they have not ever thrown him to the true deep end, and certainly Wesley Ward has been able to avoid his stablemate Golden Pal in a big way, just kind of tells me he knows he's not better than Golden Pal. And if we're looking to find the winner in here, Arrest Me Red can't be that horse. He can maybe run a credible race in the 2 or 3 slot. I could easily see that happening, in fact, especially because he's able to be a little tactical and come from off the pace. But his lack of true quality performance at the highest of levels is a bit of a concern for me. The 8 Golden Pal, this is the favorite. This is the 2-time Breeders' Cup champion, having won the Juvenile Turf Sprint in 2020 over this course and last year's Turf Sprint at Del Mar. Would love to see him take out a 3-peat, and I think he absolutely can. He's 3 for 4 this year. His only loss coming in a King's Stand where he broke terribly and was just never allowed to be a factor from that point on. Rushed up, flattened out. Very easy excuses. But at 2 and cents, very good. The Troy people didn't love. They all thought he'd be beatable in the Woodford, but then he did Golden Pal things in the Woodford. He's just a horse that I learned my lesson with in last year's Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. He's just not a horse you can look past. When he gets to go around a turn, he's better than anybody. And he's proven that time and time and time again. 4 for 4 at Keeneland. Distance, obviously not an issue. Of course, you have to be a little worried about the presence of some other speeds in here, but it's almost like he thrives off the faster paces. Because every time he's gone sub 44 for a half mile, he's won. Probably more impressive than any of his other races, and that includes 2 wins over this course. I mean, he went 43 and change in the Woodford, outgunning a ton of other speed, and still won by a length and a half. And last year's Turf Sprint was just one of the most incredible feats you'll ever see, ripping through the early portions of those races. Lieutenant Dan running the race of his life, running his eyeballs out, and he still finished multiple lengths clear of 10 of the best turf sprinters in the world as well. So Golden Pal, there's nothing really you can knock. You do worry a little bit about some of that extra pace, but if he's on his A game and he gets out of the gate well, it could be good as over. He's a horse that makes this race just a little bit easier if you have the confidence in him, which I certainly do. The 9 is Naval Crown, referenced him a little earlier as the B horse for Godolphin Charlie Appleby, and James Doyle picks up the mount after that. But he's a Group 1 winner this year. He did pull off a nice upset when winning the Platinum Jubilee back in June. But his three recent runs and his 4 runs since have all been losing efforts. The July Cup after the Platinum Jubilee, promising, but he's kind of gone south. And in the way that Emaraaty Ana's gotten better, he's almost gotten worse. They have a lot of overlapping races, and he's 11th and 12th in his most 2 respective starts, and he's been very well beaten in both of them and behind multiple horses here. So I haven't been able to figure out what's made him worse. And he is one that does like to kind of be forwardly placed, but he doesn't have the speed to handle like a Golden Pal kind of speed and the American speed in general. So automatically going to be found out of position. Certainly have to like his stablemate more. Feels like he's going to be a non-factor in here and be another surprise if he could jump up and win this. The 10 is Caravel. She is a wonderful 5-year-old mare who I would love to see put in a big performance here. If she actually can is a whole other question. Since switching to the Brad Cox barn this year, she's done a lot of good. 4 wins, 7 starts. She has been capable of finding trouble, though. I think her 2 most recent losses in the Caress and in the Presque Isle Downs Masters, she just kind of beat herself. And in the Caress, she might have had a little traffic trouble. The Presque Isle Masters, she didn't look good. But the Franklin last time out over this Keeneland course was strong. It was her first start at this track, and she's had a wonderful tracking trip inside of horses, moved when it mattered, and won by a length and 3/4. But at the same time, she does just feel like she's a couple low. You do like that she's been able to put wins together, but that's not against this level of competition. It's been purely females. She does have 1 start against the boys this year, and she was on the wrong part of the track given at Churchill Downs, but still was beaten by Arrest Me Red and Bran. And all in all, just her figures by all metrics, a cut below the best in here, and it's just very hard to envision a way that she can be better than them unless she takes that massive step forward that I, of course, cannot predict. The 11, Casa Creed, 2-time Grade 1 winner this year. Yeah, he's been a very fun horse to watch develop over the years, really, and to finally see him take that true step and get that big win in the 4-star day that felt like was a thing he'd been looking for. Then they ran him in the Coolmore Turf Mile earlier at Keeneland last month, and it was a good run, no doubt. Only beaten 2 lengths into fifth, where the winner got a perfect trip in Annapolis. But at the same time, it just kind of furthered that theme that he needs everything in between 5.5 furlongs and a mile. He doesn't like those distances. He wants to run 6.5, 7 furlongs. If they ran this race at Santa Anita while he was running this turf sprint, he'd be a lock in my eyes. But the 5.5 is just too sharp. It's not a good distance for him, and there's a reason he really has never touched this short of a distance. Even 6 furlongs has been too short for him on occasion. So as talented as he is, it just doesn't seem like a position he can win it because he's going to want more ground, and at the same time, it doesn't feel like the speed will truly back up into him the way he might need to, especially trying to compensate for the fact he doesn't love the distance. So the talent's there, but the distance is the big question. I think that's turning me and a lot of other people off of Casa Creed. The 12 is Bran. He won the turf sprint at Kentucky Downs in his most recent start, pulled off a nice little 11-1 upset in there, but it's not like that came out of nowhere. He's put together a lot of strong races this year. He's won a couple stakes, was beaten only a length and 3/4 behind Arrest Me Red at Churchill Downs, so I don't think the distance is an issue. He's just done good work, and I thought that last race was a massive step forward, and the buyer will certainly reflect that. And he beat Artemus City Limits, and Arrest Me Red. I was a lot of AR sounds in there, I guess. But point being, Bran, you got to love the improvement he's shown. And I don't think he makes no sense. Once again, feels like now that he's facing some big dogs from Europe and Golden Pal, things might get a little tougher for him, and a win is a lot less likely. But he's been hanging with his level, which is maybe the B+ level in this field. But if he can get a little better, he can throw himself into the throngs of the A-types and at least be one to grab a piece late. I don't think that's unreasonable, and I do like that he showed a lot when he ran 5.5 at Churchill. That to me means that distance is no issue for him. The 13 Cazadero, he's finally refound the form from his 2-year-old campaign, and a lot of that has to do with getting back on the grass. He was not privately purchased. He was purchased at a Horses of Racing Age sale in April of this year for $50,000. Far cry from what he looked like as a 2-year-old. But Brendan Walsh picked him up, and he took him onto the turf. And he's done great work since getting on the turf. Third off a big layoff at Saratoga. But the top 2 finishers in there, they're veterans. It's not like there's any disgrace losing to them. And then second time off the layoff, you knew there was going to be some improvement, and he showed it, winning the Arctic by 2 1/4 lengths, beating some graded stakes winners in the process. Huge late turn of foot. Very interesting progression for a horse. It makes a lot of sense that he was able to handle the turf, and I think 5.5 furlongs is not a distance that's crazy for him. And at the end of the day, that buyer plays in this field very well. I think it's better than what it fits with what Casa Creed put up. It's equal to what Bran put up in the Kentucky Downs race last time out. It's a touch below Golden Pal's career best, but at the same time, Golden Pal's capable of running a little weaker, especially if he doesn't get out of the gate. So he plays on that last race alone, and I don't think a bounce is really in the cards here. I think he's just that much better of a turf horse, and we finally got to see it. And he's another one where if the pace does back up, he'll come running late. And I don't really even think he needs that to happen, but it will certainly help him. But I think he's interesting here. He's shown the right progression. Brendan Walsh has clearly refound that magic from a couple years ago when he was a juvenile, and I think there's reason to believe he's another one who you might use underneath in some situations here, maybe as a backup in your multi-race wagers. And finally, the 14 Artemus Citylimits, fun former claimer. Always love to see those horses find success in their career, and Mike Maker's done good work progressing this horse. He worked him through the allowance ranks, paid off with back-to-back wins this summer, and from that, of course, you have to jump to stakes level. And he's ran 2 great races in his graded stakes tries. Second, beaten only a neck behind Bran, and third in the Woodford last time out. But I think that Woodford was telling. Obviously, showed he was a touch below Golden Pal, but also on top of that, Golden Pal takes away his best weapon, which is his speed. His best career races for Artemus Citylimits have come when he's allowed to get out of the gate, find the front, and hold on for dear life. And Golden Pal's natural gate speed just sucks that ability away from him. And as well as he ran in the Woodford, he just didn't pass anybody because he wasn't able to find that good positioning. And with the presence of Golden Pal here again, he's not going to be able to lead. And that's tough for a horse like this because he's really the only other true speed. And while you do have Caravel, and you do have a lot of those presser types that can bug the heck out of someone like Arrest Me Red and Naval Crown, horses that will lead when the race is kind of paceless, or at least lacking true pace. For Artemus Citylimits, you'd almost look at him as a horse who, if he breaks well, clears over from the outside, who says he can't wire the field? Golden Pal says that. So it really does kind of frustrate, because it seemed like there'd be value if that absolute standout wasn't here. So good horse, just doesn't seem like the right race for him with the right circumstances. Now the also eligibles. I did mention there too, Dancing Buck was rumored he didn't even ship, given he was put on the also eligibles list, so we'll pass over him. Oceanic, should there be a scratch and he draw in, this gelding has a minor stakes win to his credit this year, 2 from 9. Last time out, did chase Golden Pal home to be second, and has put together back-to-back 100 buyers. Once again, absolutely does play in this field. This is his distance, never worse than third at Keeneland, so positive to him, but certainly you'd think a cut below these high-level, classy turf sprinters. My choice in here, Golden Pal. We're going to keep the faith. There's reason to believe he can be beatable, but I just don't think he can be beatable at Keeneland, and especially if he hops out of the gate, he could be good as gone. I did mention, though, there's some Europeans that I think are interesting to use to pick up some pieces, and could maybe pick up all the pieces if Golden Pal's wrong. Most notably, Creative Force and Emaraaty Ana, the 1 and the 3. Emaraaty Ana, I think, more so a little than Creative Force, but I think they both have the talent, they're both in the right form, and especially for Emaraaty Ana, I really think that Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint gives you some good insight into what he can do in this race. And also Highfield Princess, obviously, just has been the best sprinter in all of Europe, has locked up awards over there already, and the pure talent could pull her through, once again, if Golden Pal's not at his best. But this will be a fun race. I hope you gleaned a little bit, and will help you in your handicapping as we look towards this very fun Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. And we'll see you next time here on Racing Rundown for more Breeders' Cup previews.